right. Yay, everybody. Oh, I should screen share. Sorry, homework that first day. There you go. I love it. All right, volume. You can read it. No, you're good. Okay. They see you? Yeah. No. Is this yours? Yeah. Oh. They can see me or the slide? They can see the slides. Okay. I just didn't want to be like no. Okay. Is everybody ready to go? Yeah. Yay. Well, thank you for coming and thank you for coming online, people that are on Zoom. Just a quick disclaimer, I guess. My over 60% of my business last year was closed from open houses. So obviously it's a huge part of where my leads come from and where my closings come from. So if there's anything I can do to be helpful to other agents, I just always kind of like to share that, because I think a lot of people don't really get taught how to do open houses. You're kind of just like thrown into it, and it's like, just do what you think you're supposed to do. So here's just some of my helpful tips. I've done a couple of these classes before, and I think what's really helpful to just keep in mind as you're listening to my stuff is this is all my brand, quote unquote. So if there's anything on here where you're like, I wouldn't necessarily say that, or maybe I would do this instead, everything can be modified to fit more what your style is, what your brand is, and so on. So personally, open houses is a really great free way to have a conversation with expecting people that are coming to the house knowing full well that they're going to be having a conversation with a realtor. In all other ways of prospecting, I feel like we're the ones reaching out to them maybe when they weren't ready for it, weren't expecting it. But in open houses, they're like, I know there's going to be a realtor there and I'm ready to have a conversation with them. So it's just a really great way for us to kind of have that icebreaker already taken, already out of the way. Also, as a newer agent, when I moved to the Twin Cities a few years ago, I was just getting told from a lot of people to put your money here, put your money there, sign for this lead source, whatever. And I was like, I haven't even had a single closing yet, so I need to find something that's a good use of my time and doesn't cost me a whole bunch of money. So again, that became open houses. One of the very first things I noticed when I started doing open houses was the way that people treated me when I dressed differently. So when you dress up, when you wear a nice outfit, when you're not just, no offense to the people that do this at open houses, but jeans and a ball cap just wasn't working for me. I think I have a little more of a battle to fight with that, just because I'm a short girl. And so I think that's just harder for people, but if it's your brand and it works for you, great. But I just personally noticed a big difference when I dress differently. So that's always one thing that I do, is just dress up at open houses, research the comps, memorize the most commonly asked questions. So when somebody asks you something, you know the answer to that. Most people don't understand that you're not the listing agent when you're in the house. And so they're just assuming they're asking the person who's selling the house these questions. And when you don't have the answer for them, they automatically, even if there's really no reason that you would know that, they think you're not credible. They're like, well, you're here selling this house. How do you not know these answers? I'm not going to hire you to represent me. The general public doesn't understand how real estate works in that way. So when you can be quick on your feet and have those answers to those questions, you just gain so much credibility very quickly. So how to prepare? There's a few things that I do, and this is kind of just a quick checklist. If at all possible, getting there early is great, so that you already have the lights turned on, you're not rushed. I play music, I get my iPad going, all that kind of stuff. It's just nice. 20 minutes, gives you good time to put out signs. You can't do that I usually try to do several open houses in one weekend. So when you're coming from another one, you don't always have that time, but at least for the first one, try and it's always stressful for me, at least when you start your day off in a rush and then everything else you're just kind of trying to catch up from. I used to print out the MLS sheet, but what I've started doing instead that's been working really well is asking people for their contact information and then just sending them the seller disclosure. I think there's always a good opportunity for you to say something like, what's been working well for me is it just to try to conserve paper. I stopped printing those out, but I'd love your email and send it over to you. Get their email. Who's going to be like, oh, please don't be paper conscious, So I've had that has worked really well. But just having some kind of reason to follow back up with them with information that they want has been the biggest change for me. Instead of just following up, hey, is there anything else you wanted to see? Thanks for coming through my open house. If you could say, hey, here's a copy of the seller disclosure that you requested. Here's, you know, the answer to the question that you were wondering about the remodel of the downstairs bathroom. It's like they're excited to hear that information because they wanted to get it back. So you're so much, I've had a much better rate of getting like a response when there is a question that I'm answering for them that they want. Putting out open house signs, obviously everybody knows to do that, but one question that I've been asking people when they come in the door is like, how did you hear about my open house? Because if they came from the sign, I'm having a totally different conversation with that person than if they looked it up online or their agent sent it to me. If they came from the signs, it to me says, I wasn't really thinking about real estate this morning. I just stumbled in here. And we're going to have a totally different type of thing, maybe way further out. They may not have any idea that they were even thinking about moving, versus if they were like, if our agent sent it to us, they couldn't make it today, or we've been scouring the MLS for weeks and can't find a house. It's just very different conversation. So asking where they found you is a great like foundation for you just to kind of have a game plan. You're kind of like where this conversation needs to go and what type of buyer we're dealing with. As cozy and welcoming as you can make the home, whether you're playing music, having a candle going, whether you're bringing treats. I know that some people's things like bring donuts or cookies or something like that, just to create a welcoming experience. And the reason that I think that's so important is because it's super naive of us to think that they're only coming to our open house. So at the end of the day, when they're sitting down and they're talking with their parents or their partner or their friend about all the open houses that they saw that day, even if the house that they met you at wasn't the one that they want to move forward with, they're going to remember the person that was there. So even if you can just be the one that stands out after they've been like, we've gone to 6 open houses, but we just really connected with Sarah. She had a really welcoming house. And then when I follow back up with them, they're so much more likely to respond and want to work with me, even though it had nothing to do with the house being the right one, but I stood out against all the other people that they met on the same day that they were looking at other open houses. I use an app. The very last bullet point on here is it's called Open Home Pro. I've used it for a really long time. There's some other apps out there by now that are different, but that's just the one that I've always used. You can put a photo of the house on the very front, so that like when people walk in, they see a picture of the house there. You can customize the questions that you ask the client, which I really like. Like, do you have an agent? How did you find me? These kinds of things. Or you can have no questions on there. It's very customizable. And then it actually keeps track of where you met that person. So then later when you're prospecting for your list, you can just go through from 6 months ago and be like, hey, so we met at 123 Main Street. And they're like, oh my gosh, I remember exactly where we met. It's just really nice to have all your contacts in like a digital form instead of having like all these little sheets of paper that you have to go through and you can't tell the R from an L and So it's free. Yep. So I set my iPad up at the house. Yep. And then the other really nice thing I like about Open Home Pro specifically is at the end of the day, it sends me an email of all the contacts that I met. And so if for whatever reason, I always like to do my follow-ups, which I'll get to later on Sunday night. And so if for some reason my day is going crazy and I'm something that's not at the forefront of my mind, getting that email from Open Home Pro is really helpful just to remind me that I need to do that. These are questions that I usually try to kind of have like just glance over the HomeSpotter app before I walk into the house, just to even know, like I said, if the buyer thinks that you're the listing agent and they walk in and you don't know what year the house was built, they're kind of interviewing us without even realizing that they're interviewing us almost. So if you walk in and you just don't have answers to their questions, and there's a difference between like, was this bathroom remodel permitted versus what years it was built? Like that's a question that's like normal to me to investigate on. The year the house was built, I just feel like we should. So these are just kind of the quick things that I like to run through before I walk in and just kind of have an idea of these top questions that I would get so that I can speak to it quickly. These are my favorites. So before I became an agent, I was an ISA for 4 years. And I think that's where the scripting really helped me, just mastering like how to say things. So a few of my favorites are you just getting started with your search or have you been looking for a while? And I love that because the way that they answer that almost always tells you whether or not they have an agent, and then you don't actually have to ask, do you have an agent? So a lot of times they'll say something like, no, this is the first open house we've gone to, and we don't really know what we're doing, but we're excited. So then it's like, okay, great. My conversation with you is going way different than if you're like, oh my gosh, we've been searching for 2 years, we've written 6 offers, haven't gotten a house. It's like, okay, clearly you have a realtor then. So it's just a great way to kind of like less abrasively ask that question, because it's the first thing we all want to know. And it should be one of the very first questions that you ask, because one of the biggest mistakes that I see people do is connect really well with somebody, pay all attention to you at the open house, and then at the very end, when I ask if you have an agent, you say yes, and I let 3 people go out the door that may not have. So prioritizing people that don't have realtors versus people that do is super important, because there's nothing more frustrating than at the end when you're trying to close and they're walking out and they tell you they have somebody. It's like, I just wasted all my time. So that should be one of the very first questions, in my opinion, to get through. Are you checking out other houses today? Same kind of question. Yeah, we're going to, 4 other open houses. So then I know that I really need to be on top of my follow-up, because they've got 3 other realtors that are going to also be after them. And if they say, no, this is the only one, and then you can say, I know of another one down the street. Would you be available after the open house, and I can take you through it? So just kind of figuring out what the rest of their day looks like, and maybe how much a lot of times when you ask these kind of open-ended questions, people just talk a lot, and you can learn a lot from what they say. I absolutely hate saying the word afford. I think everybody gets really defensive when it comes to money, and a lot of people don't like that, like limiting verbiage. And so I say, is this a price point you feel comfortable? Because a lot of times I've learned that people can get pre-approved for way more than what they actually want to spend. So when you say, like, can you afford this? People are like, well, yeah, but like, I don't feel comfortable with it. So it's just kind of like a defensive thing. But if you say comfortable in, people are very much more open to like, yes, I'm comfortable with this monthly payment. No, I'm not comfortable with this monthly payment, or I have no idea what that looks like. And then that opens up the door to have a conversation with the lender of choice, obviously. Tell me about what made you stop by today. That's a super great question, just to kind of see like, where are they at? Did they just stumble in from your open house signs and they have no plans of buying or selling? Are they nosy neighbors? Just really, again, kind of filtering through like, who am I spending my time on and who am I not? I love to ask, instead of, if for some reason these other questions you haven't like gotten to the agent piece, instead of saying, are you working with a realtor? I always like to say, do you have a realtor that's working for you? And it's just even like the simplest stuff like that, because I've had so many people like stop and think with the way I say that, like, well, I'm on like some random person's email list, but they're not like working for me. And it's just kind of rewires the way people think about how they're supposed to be getting represented. So I really like that one. I really like this question. If the right house came on the market today, would you be ready to move? And that's a really great question for like gauging motivation without having to be like, how quickly do you want to buy? I just think that sounds really salesy and like inauthentic, but that's a great question, because then you can learn, well, we have to wait no matter what for our oldest to graduate high school before we can downsize. Or, my husband's getting a promotion in 6 months and we're really needing to wait for that. So if there's like a life event that's happening in that time, that just helps me be able to know how quickly to follow up, how often to follow up. Because I think a lot of times agents just do the open house, don't ask these questions, put somebody on a drip campaign, never hear from them again. And then they're frustrated after 3 months because they're like, these people I connected with them really well and then nothing happened. And it's like, well, how intentional were you with like figuring out when the follow-up needed to happen and then planning accordingly, instead of just putting them on this widespread plan that's going to every single person, even though everybody's situation is very different. And then asking them, what are you looking for in an agent, has been a very beneficial question for me to ask at open houses too, because I can't tell you how many times, like for me personally, if somebody would follow up with me bi-weekly, and I wasn't ready, I'd be annoyed. But there are some people that love the bi-weekly, like even market updates, they find that helpful. So just following up, like, is communication really important to you? Is knowing the area really well really important to you? Like, what is it about a realtor that would make you excited to work for them? And then you can be that for them. And everybody's going to want something different. So I think the biggest mistake we make is just like not meeting their expectation, but we can't meet their expectation when we don't know what their expectation is. Just asking that is really helpful. So this has been a really helpful thing to kind of learn too, is understanding what the buyer's pain points are. everybody has them. I just feel like some people don't know how to communicate what they are, and they may have a pain point that they don't even realize is a pain point. And so just kind of leaning into that. It could be something as simple as like yard space for their kids, or walkable to school, or, you know, there's a lot of things where they're like, this is just kind of a thorn in my side in my life right now. And if I could have a different feature about this home, it would totally change how I lived my life. And so figuring those things out and really asking the question, like, why is that important to you? Why is that make such a difference? How would having this change your life? And just kind of painting that picture so those people are kind of living in the future of like, this is how my life would change living in this type of property. And then that can really help you be able to sell them that, because they're already different. Tell me more is something I say all the time. I'm asking questions and people are kind of elaborating. Tell me more about that. Tell me why, those kind of questions. Because it's really just open-ended, and it just, like I said, people will work on it and you'll just be able to soak up so much information. You just ask those more open-ended questions. This is what my setup looks like. So that's Open Home Pro. I have a picture of the house. You can either take a picture when you get there, or you can just screenshot one from the MLS, which is what I do, and then you just click upload and tap. It's like 2 taps and it's on there. Try to always do a candle and then my business cards. Just kind of have like an inviting space. The other thing that I really like to do is I set up somewhere like in the kitchen typically, so like towards the back of the house. I don't like to be forcing people to sign in right when they get there. I think about if I was in that person's shoes and somebody's shoving a sign-in sheet in my face and we haven't even had a conversation yet, I'm already like frustrated by that and I don't trust that person. But if you can kind of guide them through the home, ask some questions, gain rapport a little bit, and at the end say something like, I'd love to get you more information on this. If you want to throw your email in here, I'll get back to you later. It's just so much more of a like disarming way of doing that. And so I just prefer to do it that way. And I've got so many more people to sign in if it's not something that they're requiring. These are just a list of a few things that I do to stand out. Because remember, the biggest thing is they're going to a lot of open houses. So when they're thinking about all the houses that they went to, it's not even going to be anything about the house. It's going to be you when they're thinking about those encounters. So I always open the door for people. That's just kind of a safety thing too. I don't like being in the back of the house when people are just walking in. I always say, I'm glad you stopped by. Tell me more about why you came through. Tell me more about why this house was one that you wanted to make a priority to see, questions like that. I don't follow people around. I'll just say, I very much set the expectation right when people walk into my open house. I don't like to follow you around. Take a look around. I'll get some feedback from you when you're done. Make sure you check out the renovated owner's suite. It's gorgeous. So they know that I'm not going to follow them. They know they're going to have to talk with me when they come back, and they know what to look for, which one feature. So it's just a very like, they totally know how this is going to go. And so then when they come back around, I'm like, what did you think of the owner's suite? It's just a talking point. So that there's like an icebreaker instead of just being like, what did you think? So then when they come back through, they know they're going to have to give me some feedback, and we have a conversation about the owner's suite. So it's just a really easy way to like get them to come back through, say bye to you before they leave, and hopefully sign it. If you're worried about like safety, or you want somebody to do the open house with you, a lender's a good option for that. One of my favorite lines that a trainer that I have when I was in ISA said, people love to be served, not sold. I think that's so like important with open houses, because we're complete strangers to these people. It's not like we were a referral from a friend and we already have a little rapport. It's not like they know who we are and we're a complete stranger. We know we're qualified and we know we can do the job really well, but they have no idea. And so just giving that top level service is super important for them to kind of recognize. And if you guys have ever gone to open houses, you know pretty much how low the bar is. And so even if you can just do a few of these things, you're going to stand out. And then the one biggest thing that I just feel like people forget to do or don't want to do is ask for the sale. As salespeople, being rejected is a big fear for all of us. And I think a lot of like, every time I do this class, I'm like, can everybody remember a time where they did an open house, connected really great with somebody, they were afraid to ask for the sale or didn't really know how to close it, and then that person's walking down the driveway and you're totally kicking yourself because you're like, I would love to work with those people. They didn't have an agent, but I like panicked and didn't know what to do. That's like the most frustrating place to be in. So just being able to kind of implement all these things along the way is a really great way for you to be able to like successfully close it, gain a little bit of rapport so you don't feel icky asking them to sign in. Just, it's a lot of little things along the way, so it feels very brand and to finish. I don't need to go through all of these because I can send these slides to everybody so you can read through these, but these are the 4 DISC profiles. And if you don't know what the DISC profile is, I would highly recommend taking it. I have a link for the free version of them. It's a very quick way for you to kind of identify like who you're. I think all of us also have been in a situation where, like, if you're a high D like myself, I kind of just want the facts. I want to get the information, not into a ton of small talk. And there are so many people that when I'm like, for example, when I was buying a refrigerator, it was like, this doesn't need to be a 30-minute conversation. Like, tell me the 3 things I want to know about this refrigerator, and then I will say yes or no. And when somebody doesn't know how to sell me the way that I want to be sold, I get really frustrated. And buyers are the same exact way. So if you can identify like, oh, you're an S, you're going to need a little bit more hand holding. You're going to need a little bit more, you know, warm fuzzies and kind of hand, if you will, then that's like a totally different type of approach than somebody who's a D like myself. And they just want to know when they can see it again. And if the bathroom is permitted, it's like, I will get you the answers to those questions. And we don't need to keep going about other things you didn't ask about. Yeah. So just kind of it can feel really, weird if you're like, I'm not the like warm fuzzy type person usually, but when I have to give that to somebody else because I know they are, it can feel a little bit weird because I'm like, this is not my normal. But the best salespeople can modify how they sell to who they're selling to, because if you can't do that, you're going to have these clients that like you can just never get along with, but then you're also going to have all these clients that you get along with so great because they're just naturally how you are. But being able to bend how you sell to who needs what is a really, really important skill to have. This is about what follow-ups look like. So I always do same day follow-up. I try to do a video. And obviously if it's an older person, maybe not a video, kind of read your audience a little bit. Send a video, say how great it was to meet them. On the first follow-up, I'm not asking any questions. I'm not asking when can we meet up. I'm simply just saying that it was great to meet them because this is a Sunday night. So they're trying to enjoy their night before they go back to work. They're not really about this. So I don't want to be that nagging, like, when can we get a meeting on the calendar? It's like some type of follow-up. So that's the first day. And then in week, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday-ish, then that's when I'll go back and say, hey, I know when we were in the house, we had a conversation that you were just getting started. I would love to sit down with you and walk through what buying your first home looks like. Is that something that sounds like it would be helpful to you? Just then you can kind of go into the questions, setting up a meeting, that kind of thing. But I just typically don't do that on the first try. And then whatever, like, I know we all probably use Follow Up Boss, but I just put tasks in Follow Up Boss for a week, anywhere between like 5 to 7 days if I haven't heard back. And just, I mean, I hosted an open house in Northeast like a month ago, and I think I texted him 6 times before he replied. Like, and it was like, he never said stop. We had a great connection. And I think that's a big mistake a lot of agents make too, is they'll text like 1 or 2 times and not hear back, and they'll be like, they hate me, they don't want to work with me. And it's like, that's totally not the case. How many times have you gotten a text message from somebody, you totally intended on replying, and then you completely forgot? That happens to everybody else. And we are like a blip on these people's radars, whereas this is our entire career. We have to remember that we're thinking about them way more than they're thinking about us. And he responded and was like, yeah, I would love to, sorry for the late response, would love to get a coffee. So it's like, just be a little persistent. And just keep those tasks in Follow Up Boss. Like when you like that it's completed and you send a text, just literally do another one for 5 days. Then that way that person's just staying top of mind, unless they tell you that they don't want to talk to you, and then update accordingly. But that's one place where I see a lot of agents kind of drop the ball a little bit, is just with the consistent follow-up if you haven't heard back from somebody. One of my favorite sayings is Sundays are gold, Mondays are old. And I just like that because it reminds me to send that text on Sunday and just say that it was nice to meet somebody. Because if they went to 4 open houses and you're the only one that sent that text on the same day and just said it was great to meet you, I really enjoyed our conversation. Like, think about how differently you're already standing out in front of everybody else who's waiting until Monday to follow back up. Oh. Yeah.
If you're not muted, please mute yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So closing the buyer at the end, I think the biggest thing for me has just been getting the information and then telling them exactly what to expect. I'm going to send you an email later, the seller disclosure that you requested. You're going to be hearing from me again, just telling them what to expect so that it's not like, okay, I'll talk to you later, and then they just don't know. Do you want me to, Holly?
Yeah.
What is
I don't
it?
know how to. Yeah. So yeah, I just think the biggest thing for closing the buyer is just saying, this is what to expect next. This is when you're going to hear from me. This is the information you're going to get. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. Like when we can just set the expectation, I mean, even think of yourself as the consumer. When you go into a situation, like for me, I had to buy a new fridge a couple months ago. And it was like, the selling piece was extremely frustrating because they were selling it to me the wrong way. But then when I got there, it was like, you're going to hear from our delivery team. This is how it's going to go. They're going to give you a 2-hour window. They're going to come in and like, I just knew exactly what was happening. And that was so helpful instead of just being like, okay, you're going to hear from these people next and we'll go from there. I knew exactly what was going to happen in like 4 or 5 steps, and do that for the client too. You're going to hear from me. I'm going to give you this information. I'll follow back up and we can set up a time to get a coffee. They know exactly what's happening. And I've always taken the assumptive close. If that's not your style, then you can kind of do however fits you best. But unless somebody says they don't want to work with me, I just assume that we're going to be working together. So I look forward to working together. I look forward to helping you find your first home. I look forward to helping you downsize. Just kind of putting that in their head that like they should leave my open house thinking, oh, I guess I have a realtor now. That's exactly what I want. And it seemed easy. And oh, she was just there and it was convenient and she was helpful and that's great. That's exactly how it should feel, just as easy as that. Because it's so awkward when they sense doubt in you about, well, do you want to work with me? Like that's so awkward. And if you're doubtful, they're gonna be doubtful. But if you're super confident, they're like, oh, okay, great. I have a realtor now. This is awesome. So this is just kind of the comparison that I've noticed between like the value adds that I like to have and what every other agent is doing. Again, I like to follow up same day. I feel like a lot of agents wait until Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. Asking how can I serve you versus how can I help you? Does this feel like the right time? That's a great question to ask if you're like following up with somebody and you text them a few times and they haven't responded. Or I also really like to say, I think I have this in here, what has changed since our last conversation? That is such a disarming question because a lot of times something changes in people's circumstance. Maybe they couldn't get approved for as much as they thought they could and they're embarrassed about it and they're just not going to text you back. What has changed since the last time we chatted? Is something different? How can I walk you through this? Is there anything that I can further explain? Just the biggest thing is just disarming people and making sure that like we've seen it all. We can walk through anything. So that's just a big piece of it too, is like not just trying to take that more like softer approach, because that's where it's super important. Once you get the client and they trust you, then you can kind of take over a little bit more of your like maybe natural sales side and being a little bit more direct and maybe not quite as intentional with the words you say, but getting the client is the hard part. And so in those few weeks where they're kind of figuring out like whether or not they want to work with you, this is where this is really important. And to that point, people often forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And that's like the epitome of what I want to help agents with, is just setting the mode for putting yourself in a position where buyers can walk away feeling like you listened, feeling like you cared, feeling like you were knowledgeable, feeling like they really trust you and want to work with you. So I think that's when you totally have the power position, when everybody feels like they can easily approach you, can easily talk to you. And if they go to other open houses, they're not getting that same kind of feeling and they're always going to kind of gravitate back towards you. And the other thing I just want to say, which I think we all know, but it's all about consistency over time. So I've done this class a few times, and I know there's people out there that after this, they like feel re-energized and they're like, I'm gonna give it a try. And they do like 2 in a month and it doesn't go anywhere, and then they give up. And I understand that open houses are not going to be a good fit for everybody. There are some people that kill it with door knocking, not my thing. Some people kill it with farming neighborhoods, not my thing. Open houses are my thing. It's a part of my schedule. It's a part of my, like, I do them every single weekend, and it's just a part of my, honestly, like, work schedule. So if that's not something that you feel like you can implement well, or you're going to have to drag yourself to open houses every weekend, or it's something that you really don't enjoy whatsoever, then kind of think about that a little bit before you try and force something to work that doesn't really work. So that's just kind of a disclaimer of like, it's great if you feel like if you feel like you can make it work. But again, it's not for everybody. Some people don't like being in person. Some people would rather call from behind the phone. It's like whatever it is, but that's just how it's worked for me. The other thing to think about too is if nobody comes to my open house, I just use that as a 2-hour work day. I bring my laptop, I have a hot spot, I have a coffee, I just get work done. So I don't ever feel like it's wasted time. And I hear a lot of people say like, oh, I wasted 2 hours of my weekend at an open house. It's like, well, that's 2 hours that I don't have to work on Monday because I just got a bunch of stuff done that I would have otherwise had to do. And now I can do something else with those 2 hours on Monday. So just kind of reframing, like, it's not a waste of time. I just got basically 2 convenient hours of office time done on the weekend. And now that's less hours that I have to work during the week. There is.
Hey, Sarah, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Hi, it's Alexa. So I did open houses with my other brokerage. And when you're talking about, the 2 hours to get your work done, how do you like situate yourself in the open house so that you can like not be like, how do you make sure you get up like right away to make sure you're not like running over to the door and saying sorry or whatever you were going to say? Like, where do you kind of sit during the open house, like when you're doing that, so you can make sure you know who's coming and going?
Yeah, I mean, usually I would say like the kitchen, standing up at the kitchen like bar or countertop and just checking the door if you can't see it. A lot of times the door is like in view, or you can sit on the stairs in the living room. Like there's a lot of places where you can kind of just like post up and keep an eye on the door.
Okay, so it's not weird when you're like kind of getting up and they're there. It's just whatever.
Well, I always listen for car doors too. Like you can hear car doors from any part of the house.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. And this stat was from when I was in ISA, so I'm sure this is different now, but it takes an average of 18 contacts to get an appointment with somebody. That was like crazy to me. So it's like when I was joking about like I texted this guy 9 times, like that still wasn't as many as it takes on average. Like you have to keep after these people because again, we're complete strangers and it's going to take a lot of work for us to convince them to work with us when they're meeting us for the very first time and they're meeting other people on the same day. And it's kind of like, yeah, just remembering that it's not about doing one open house, getting somebody and then closing them in a couple of weeks. These people are coming to open houses, I would say most often to kind of test the waters because they don't have to be connected to an agent to go to open houses. So a lot of times they're like kind of just feeling things out. They're maybe a year out. Maybe they're closer and they just don't realize it, but that's again where we can kind of come in with this expertise. But it's not necessarily a fast game. It's definitely something that's taken time, takes time to cultivate. You have to be intentional with reaching back out to people. Yeah, that's where all of the tasks and follow-up costs can be really helpful. So just like a few key things that I always try to remember, we think about them way more than they think about us. Know when to stop selling yourself. I've seen a lot of agents in open houses like just start saying all these things like about me, right? Like I do this, I sold this many houses, I did this volume. It's like they have literally no idea. Like if you told somebody you did $1 million in volume, that would sound incredible and amazing to them. Like they don't get that. So just know when to stop selling yourself and make it more about them than about you, if that makes sense. And then one of my favorite things to think about when I'm in the house is what can I tell them about this house that they cannot find on Zillow? Because that is where everybody's getting all their information. And if you tell them something, if they walk in and you're like 4-bed, 2-bath, 1,300 square feet, $249.9, they're like, yeah, I know all of that already. That's why I'm here. But But if they can walk in and you can share information about, you know, there's a park down the street, there's this feature, there's this update that they can't find online, that's where the true value is added. And then that person is going to be like, oh, I'm going to call Sarah back. She had a lot of like really helpful information that I just didn't have at my fingertips. That's it. Does anyone have questions? No.
Hey, Sarah, I might have missed it. Hopefully I didn't, but do you door knock the neighborhood? You said you don't like door knocking, I know, but have you done that before? Door knock the neighborhood,
Yeah.
call the people? Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually have door knocked the neighborhood and invited the neighbors to like an exclusive 30-minute open house. So like before the open house, you could say, hey, it's open to you guys only for 30 minutes, you know, prior, come from 10:30 to 11, and maybe your open house starts at 11. So that's a really good
I like
way
that
to,
one. That's a good one.
And make them feel a little special. And then you kind of get like, I think it's helpful to have some more, because neighbors always talk, right? So like helpful information about, so, and it's not anything you can obviously market, but just saying like, hey, so-and-so lives here and this is a super dog friendly neighborhood, or this is whatever, just from what the neighbors are telling you. That's really helpful. Again, information that they can't find on Zillow. So I have done that in the past.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I just wanted to know your opinion on it.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? There's really no like right or wrong way to do it. And like I said, a lot of these tips that has worked for me may not work for you specifically, but just kind of take the whole like concept and fit it around kind of your brand and what works well for you. Anyone else? All right. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Sarah.